This podcast is about correcting the balance, whether it's something celebrated as good when it shouldn't be, or the other way around. Or maybe the heroic tales of history just need to be knocked straight on their ass. Me, I just want to share the complete picture, because that's when this whole thing gets fun. Warning, jokes and sarcasm may ensue. Welcome to Prick the Balloon. Hi, I'm Mike Vance, and welcome to episode 23, the Michael Jordan episode of Prick the Balloon. It's been a while, and I'll talk about that at the end, but first, let me warn you, this episode is a tad bit different. It is a post-election deconstruction, a use of solid American history to calm some nerves and offer some perspective, I hope, and a little bit of a rant. All right, a whole lot of a rant. And understand, it's going to contain some tough love and cold hard facts. So put on your thick skins. And while much of this history is more recent than my usual fare, it is damn important history. Okay, 3 weeks have gone by, and I'm still pissed off about the election. Initially, like most of the rest of you, I was shell-shocked, even though deep down, I got to admit I felt like we were about to lose. But I've pretty much shaken that off. My emotional palate has expanded, let's say. For sure, I am still sickened and disgusted that tens of millions of people ignored the basic tenets of decency, that they voted for an amoral, mouth-breathing idiot who has been found guilty of rape in a civil trial, not to mention the 34 felony criminal convictions. It turns my stomach that they took every lesson that they teach their children and grandchildren and shoved them right down the toilet because they were hoping to save 20 cents on a dozen eggs. The prospect of the next 2 years without any say in this criminally gerrymandered and unequal, corrupt government turns my stomach. But do you know who I'm most upset with? I'm disappointed with my fellow progressives. Number one, some of y'all didn't go fucking vote. Not necessarily the ones listening right now, but lots of others. Not enough progressives donated money to get out the vote efforts. The Orange Con Man did slightly better than he did in 2020, but Democrats in deep blue cities stayed home. The Dems lost almost 3 times the number of voters that Mango Mussolini gained over 2020. Millions of Democrats and reasonable independents stayed away. That was the difference. In spite of the goon repeating that he won in a landslide, it was 1.5 percentage points. Now, that still ain't good, but it's close. So it's not a mandate. The Democratic Party nationally and statewide in many places didn't bother spending money on outreach and voter turnout, especially in places like Latino voters in South Texas and Arizona and Nevada and other places where it really matters. I don't know who in holy hell they're hiring for campaign advisors. Maybe their 6-year-old grandkids, or maybe that homeless dude with the mismatched sneakers who hangs out behind the Starbucks. But if I find myself talking back to Democratic candidate TV ads and asking myself out loud why they're sticking to that message, it's not because I'm a bus station bag lady. It's because I see a major problem in our messaging before the election even gets here. Here's some unhappy history. You'll recall 2016, when just enough progressives wasted their vote on Jill Stein that it cost Hillary Clinton 3 states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Yeah, those same 3 states. If those Jill Stein votes had gone to Hillary, she gets elected president, and the spray-tan con man slinks off into the sunset. To paraphrase another Republican, our long national nightmare would have been over before it started. That's not speculation. Those are public numbers. Look them up. Those petulant voters cost Hillary Clinton those 3 states and made the goon president. For the record, the analysis of Ross Perot voters back in '96 suggests that 52% of them preferred Bill Clinton as a second choice. So in that case, it did not cost the real George Bush the election. But Jill Stein sure as shit cost Hillary, and by extension, us. Way too often, the hardest-core libs act like spoiled little children who need something to be absolutely perfect before they sign on. Newsflash, life ain't perfect. People are not perfect. So get over yourselves and start doing some good. Stop tossing aside friends because they liked Warren better than Bernie. No shit, I am not making this up. I had at least one real-life friend cancel me from his circle because I had the temerity to support Elizabeth Warren in the primary in 2016. You don't split fucking hairs when it comes to running the country. Yeah, I gave To Kill a Mockingbird 1 star on Goodreads because there was a typo on page 257. Nobody is going to agree with you 100% of the time. Like, for example, right now, you chicken shit little pansies. We've got to get elected first, and then, and only then, do you get to hash out policies. I'm going to piss off a lot of my friends if I didn't about 27 seconds ago. And they know that I am as progressive and liberal as they come. But when I see my Facebook friends saying they are deleting their Facebook account and leaving social media because they can't tolerate any more of the ignorant fucking right-wing pieces of shit rambling about whatever, who cares, that makes me very angry. We lost the election. It's not the first time. We've lost before. We were also adult enough to admit we lost the goddamn election, unlike another party I know and won't bother naming. Republican. But you keep fighting on the issues. The difference between Kamala voters and Orange Conman voters are the issues. We do wild and crazy things, us libs, like read books and understand the news. We fret and angst over Project 2025, while the other side thinks it's an old Zager and Evans tune. Among people who read, watch, and listen to really professionally trained journalism, the Democrats won overwhelmingly. That is why we have to keep following and fighting for the issues. Most on the other side voted on a cult of warped personality. They somehow see a righteous savior in a despicable excuse for a human who has 34 felony conviction and has been found, as I said, liable in civil cases of rape. Again, rape. How is that even possible? We all know what hopelessly hypocritical people the evangelicals are, but rape? The radical right is the biggest bunch of snowflakes on the planet. They cry about every little slight. Woo-hoo, Bud Light showed a rainbow. Oh, some football player took a knee to protest the stone-cold fact that police are randomly killing black people. Oh, I'm never watching football again. They crawl under their bed with a toupee-wearing rag doll when a person of color is given a 2-point consideration in college admissions to make up for 400 years of systemic racism. Lord knows that powerful women make 'em roll up into a little fetal camouflaged ball. But now, the liberals are joining them. Someone said something I didn't like, so I'm leaving social media forever. Well, I've got news for you. Social media is how we share great opinion pieces and solid bits of journalism that need to be spread far and wide. It's one way we get out the vote. It's how we learn about new candidates and new ideas. So you're going to crawl off in a corner and pout like some MAGA baby? Grow the fuck up. Life has losses. And if you want to win, you fight. You don't leave. Like Kamala rightly said, when we fight, we win. Except we didn't fight. That's on us. We didn't turn out the vote. A few million of us took for granted that there was no way that buffoon would win. The fact that America holds elections and barely more than half of registered voters bother to get off their asses and vote, that's the biggest crime here. In 21 states, turnout was less than 2/3 of eligible voters. In some of those, barely more than half. That is fucking despicable. Shame, shame. Look, for those of you who don't have a sports background and haven't been yelled at by coaches, well, first of all, I mean, sincerely, your loss. But let's look at it another way. Let me try this from the positive angle. Of all the times in the last several years, progressives need a good, solid community of friends right now more than ever. You need people who agree with you, people to share your outrage at the inevitable stupid shit that is going to happen. And it will happen. Disengaging from Facebook, which is the one social platform that allows for long-form thought sharing and links to articles and podcasts, unlike some others, is the wrong move. Delete, block, repeat to anyone who pisses you off, but otherwise, it's called throwing the baby out with the bath. More like you shaved the poor baby's eyebrows and drew an ironic mustache on him first. So please, just stop it. I mentioned Facebook specifically, and it's annoying as hell, all of the ads, but it can do things that other places cannot. Look, I deleted my Twitter account the day Musk bought it, the very day, back when it still had a street value higher than a Popeye's Biggie box. Millions of others rationalized it for 2 years, right up until that asshole bought the election for the Orange Goon. The value of the platform lies in how many users it has. So libs sticking around over there is putting money in Musk's pockets. Money you now see has passed directly to the fourth ring of hell. I am now on Blue Sky, but Facebook, like I said, annoying as it can be, is also where thousands of musicians and authors count on spreading the word about their work. It's a social following they have built for many years, and when you start leaving, you're kicking those independent creative people right in the crotch. And since they're almost definitely broke, they're already wearing threadbare underwear, if any at all, and that kick hurts them really badly. It's like canceling your Washington Post or New York Times subscription because you're going to show those corrupt billionaires that there are consequences for not endorsing Harris. You know, all billionaires compile their wealth at the expense of poor schmoes like us. But there are differences between Bezos and Musk. One actively endorsed and gave money to Satan, and the other was just hedging his bets and trying to head off major government attacks. One gives all of his money, and I mean what's left from the hundreds of billions he doesn't have hidden in Montgomery Burns' basement, to causes that only benefit him. The other, Jeff Bezos, has given $640 million to help the homeless. He gave over $700 million to cancer research. As billionaires go, he ain't that bad. And as far as consequences, today Bezos is worth $218 billion. That's today. So your Post subscription that you probably got on the discount for $29 a year, well, that's really not going to break him. What you probably did succeed in doing is costing some of those hardworking journalists, the last line of defense for our democracy, their jobs. Here's another hard fact that progressives need to come to grips with. Not all of the people who voted for him are true MAGA believers. Some held their nose and made what I'll wager will prove in their minds to be a misguided decision. Whether they admit it out loud or not, I think those swing voters will have buyer's remorse pretty damn soon if they don't already. Like we all haven't made bad decisions. Think back on that weirdo you woke up next to in 1993, hung over and trying to figure out where the hell you parked your car. Or leisure suits, big hair. Jesus, thousands of us had our high school pictures taken that way. There's a million mistakes in every one of our lives. So cut those people a little break. Yeah, we'll all pay for it in the short term, but this really is reversible. As I like to preach about history, almost no one is all bad or all good, and a lot of good people made a dumbass political move. A few million of those very same people also voted for Biden last time, and Obama before that. I'll be damned if I can figure it out, but they did. The numbers don't lie. I'm also begging you to stop this smug, blaming red states, and I say I won't set foot in a state that voted for that small-mouthed Slurito for the next 4 years. Do you know what state gave the second highest number of votes to the Harris-Walz ticket? That'd be Texas. 4.8 million Texans voted blue. Some of the most reliable blue cities in the country are in Texas. Houston has not elected a Republican mayor in 40 years. Do you know what cities cannot make that claim? L.A. and New York. That kiss-ass Elise Stefanik, where's she from? Blue New York. Those red states are chock full of blue business owners who could use some real support right now. So save your boycotts for Hobby Lobby, Papa John's, and Dillard's, who are radical right-wingers to the core. Otherwise, you Californians largely need to get over yourselves. Look, here's the important thing. The Democratic Party abandoned the message that won for them before. In the middle 1960s, when the Democrats held the most lopsided grip on power in the post-World War II era in the last 85 years, it was because the Democrats mixed social liberalism with working-class economic populism. And that's populism as the original sense of the word meant it. We fought for unions. Unions were, and unions should be, the backbone of the middle class. Progressives and liberals need to clearly enunciate the middle-class issues that people care about. And some of you may not like to hear this next thing, but the vast majority of Americans do not give a rat's ass about transgender issues. It is sad but true. That's just the way it is at the moment. They don't understand the biology. They stopped paying attention to science in 8th grade when they were too busy staring at their lab partner's budding rack. It's not their battle. All focusing on that did was give the right wing ammunition for misdirection. Get in office, then pass the laws to protect the transgendered. But first, you have to get in office. You know what the majority of Americans do care about? The fact that their rent has doubled in the last 5 years, and that billion-dollar investment firms have bought up all the housing stock in order to further increase their profits. We need to stick to the basics. Lots of people voted for Cheeto Benito. They were also scared of his anti-democratic bullshit. They also hate the abortion bans. They don't want books burned, but they are more scared of not being able to afford a decent place to live. The Democrats did not focus sufficiently on those issues, at least not on a presidential level. 4 Democratic Senate candidates talked about that, and they won in a state carried by the Orange Goon. Look, presidential elections always bring out the irregular and infrequent voters, the uninformed, people who don't know the issues, the people who think Pam Bondi was a Disney deer. It's what separates us from them. They don't know Stephen Miller from Heinrich Himmler. Okay, bad example. Those two were almost impossible to tell apart, but you get the idea. Issues and policy might be our thing, but they are not for everyone. And our job is to break it down so everyday folks can buy in to what's actually good for them. One thing that should become wildly apparent to everyone is that abortion rights voters are already overwhelmingly Democrats. Millions of Republican-leaning women who Democrats thought would rush to the polls on that issue alone either didn't bother voting or voted for the reality clown show. Yeah, freedom of choice for women's health care is hugely popular as an issue, as in 75% of Americans popular, but most people turned out to not be single-issue voters, like the lunatic evangelicals were on the other side. It's just like immigration voters were largely Republican already. We spent our time talking about abortion and ignoring the economy. We should have been touting the Infrastructure Act and all those jobs and all that great public works. Shit, the radical righties who voted against it in Congress all ran on its benefits. And I didn't hear Harris mention that once. I just said immigration, and earlier I talked about those Latino voters. Here's something that hadn't dawned on me until I started digging into it post-election. Those Latino districts on the border are 90% Mexican-descended people. But the people crossing the border now are largely Hondurans and Salvadorans and Venezuelans, and expecting the folks with Mexican heritage to automatically side with these new immigrants because his orangeness is anti-immigrant, it's like expecting the French and Germans to have each other's back because they're both white Europeans, or expecting the Germans to have anyone's back, actually. Of course, some of those Mexican Americans will inevitably get caught up in the blanket hatred that is about to spew toward everyone with dark skin. But taking their votes for granted has clearly not worked in the last 3 election cycles. I'll repeat, Democrats need to spend money there and talk about the economic kitchen table issues that matter to those voters. It's worth a quick detour here to mention the mass deportation the U.S. carried out during the Great Depression. Millions of people came to the U.S. from Mexico during the Mexican Revolution from 1910 into the 1920s. Businesses over here needed the labor, and we welcomed them for the most part. But when the Depression hit and factories closed and farms failed, there were no jobs anymore. All of a sudden, we didn't want those people here. So the federal government, under both Hoover and FDR, with a big helping hand from states, especially from California, deported over 2 million people back to Mexico. Here's the thing. A whole shitload of those people were American citizens who just happened to be of Mexican descent. It was so bad that the state of California issued an apology for it in 2006. And my fear is that this history may well rear its ugly mane again. All right, deep breath. That all needed to be said, in my opinion, and a small start on the hard truths progressives need to address. But let's move on to positive reasons for y'all not to start haranguing foreign consulates. For starters, not all Republicans are bad on every issue, and Democrats and progressives need to wake the fuck up about that. That's part of the way we continually shoot ourselves in our own ass. Not the foot, but right in the ass. Here's one very large example. Lots of conservatives, especially through the West and the Southwest, are passionate about land and species conservation. In fact, most of the folks who are financing and carrying out things like planting native grasses and restoring habitat across Texas and Wyoming and Utah and the like are extremely red voters, most of them. Those states that I just named are among the most active in habitat conservation, and it's being led by ranchers and hunters who care deeply about the outdoors and, by extension, clean air and clean water. I bring that up because I want to take a second and look at some of the people pouring out of the tiny clown car of appointees. We already saw Gates get lambasted over his crimes and despicable perversions because it became abundantly clear that some Republican senators had zero intention of voting for that smarmy bastard. So that should give you some hope right there. But here's a couple of specific surprises that we just haven't seen play out yet. Both RFK Jr., that bear-killing, worm-eating loon, and Dr. Oz, who likes getting hopped up on horse dewormer, are on record for supporting a government program like Medicare for All. And that's who's going to be in charge of major health departments, unless the right-wing Republicans kind of click to this and vote them down. Furthermore, one of the main causes that the chronically disavowed Kennedy is backing is eliminating things like overly processed food and high-fructose corn syrup. So, who knows? Here's another one. His nominee for Labor Secretary is Lori Chavez DeRemer. She's a moderate from a swing district in Oregon who is backed by the Teamsters. Remember, the Teamsters were the primary union to refuse to issue any endorsement, and their payback evidently was getting to pick the labor secretary. Now, call me a cynic and skeptic because I think she won't get to do anything, and I believe those Teamsters will regret the living shit out of not backing Harris, but we'll see what happens. The election is done and cannot be changed, so having a sane person in the room can only be viewed as a small win. Long term, there are a bunch of new Republican politicians who see wooing labor as a good thing, even though the billionaires like Musk believe in firing workers who go on strike. If somehow they improve things for American labor, that is a policy win for progressives, no matter where it came from. Bottom line on this is the Orange Goon cares about one thing and one thing only, the Orange Goon. And that means anyone who willingly hands over money and licks his pasty white ass gets his or her way to a certain degree. Note that when Musk started ponying up, Cheeto is now for electric cars. The Teamsters stayed out of endorsements and they got a labor secretary. First, there is a mega light years distance between talking shit and making laws. And second, if the con man has shown us anything, it's that he changes his Big Mac-addled mind frequently. And for all of the Looney Tunes aspects of some of his appointees, there are a few camel noses under the tent now that are not ideological radical righties. Another overarching thing that might be good to remember is that in the last Congress, when Republicans had a slightly larger majority than they will enjoy in January, they couldn't do jack shit. It took 15 rounds of voting for them to pick Kevin McCarthy. 15! And that was only after he agreed to dress up in leather and sexually service every House member individually. And I do mean member. Marjorie Taylor Greene, yep, she's going to have a leadership role, and she thinks Jewish donkeys are controlling the weather. So take some solace in the question, how effective can these total maroons actually be? The next thing right here, here's the biggest historical note I want everyone to keep in mind. 2 years is our target, not 4. House elections in midterms almost always means large gains for the party not in power, for the party that does not hold the White House. In midterm elections since 1946, that's 20 elections, do you know how many times the president's party outpolled the opposition party? Anybody? The answer is 1. 1 lousy time. That was in 2002 when the Republicans had George W. in the White House and they still won the overall popular vote for the House by 4.3%. So why did that one little anomaly happen? Well, it was a year after freaking 9/11. Americans were still rallying around each other and invading the wrong countries. We had uber-patriotic shit going on. There were T-shirts with eagles to buy. But other than that one time, the party out of power always wins. The most one-sided Congress since World War II was the 89th. That was the one that came in when LBJ drugged that snot-nosed fascist Goldwater face down through the pigsty of justice. In the 89th Congress, Democrats controlled a full 2/3 of both the Senate and the House. They had supermajorities. They had seats on both sides of the aisle, and the few Republicans around there caucused in a photo mat. Love you, Jim Patterson. Those Democrats not only passed the Voting Rights Act, they created housing and urban development, put cancer warnings on cigarettes, beautified highways, pumped billions into education, protected lab animals, promoted arts and humanity, improved highway safety, expanded public transportation, passed laws for historic preservation, wildlife refuges, and started to control air pollution. In short, they did more great things with LBJ pushing them than any Congress ever. And when election time came in 1966, the Republicans gained 47 seats in the House. So what I'm telling you is that with a margin tighter than Matt Gaetz's dating pool, the Republicans will lose the House in 2026. Sometimes the gains by the party out of power can be really dramatic. In 2010, with Obama in his first term, the Democrats lost 63 seats. In 1946, with Truman as president, they lost 53 seats. And that new right-wing Congress that came in, that was the one that did everything they could do to destroy unions in America. But even the most modest of changes is usually a 9 or 10 or 11 seat swing. But 10 out of those 20 midterm elections, there was a swing of 27 seats or more. So take heart in that history. What we really need to be most chilled about is billionaires. People like Musk and Scott Bessent. It's exactly like Morgan, Frick, Rockefeller, Carnegie, and all the robber barons of the late 1800s. That was a time when workers suffered and income inequality grew, and that will happen again. It's gonna. The clear difference is that we have a much broader access to voting, and we have greater ability to influence policy than we did in 1896. Make no mistake, Musk's attraction to the goon is that the guy has no spine and will happily eliminate all roadblocks to Musk making more money, as if the potential world's first ever trillionaire needs more money. Greed is a horrible and incurable disease. Cue Alanis Morissette. Every day, some billionaire wakes up wanting more. So, we all know that Musk's sole goal is to make the government leave him alone to pollute water and milk the federal teat, which is exactly what the brain-addled con man did during Term 1. Musk said he wants to cut the federal budget by 1/3 and, quote, there will be hardships, end quote. Well, no hardships for the richest dude in the world, of course, just for the racist third graders who kept slapping orange goon stickers on their single wides. There are two butts here, though. Maybe not quite as fat as Cheeto Bonitos, but butts nonetheless. I already mentioned the electric cars thing. Musk claims to be libertarian, but don't forget he backed Obama, Hillary, and Biden. He has stated his support for a universal basic income. On the negative side, he's a conspiracy theorist who hates unions and has doubts about climate change. It's scary as shit. But again, these are not the hardcore doctrinaire righties like Bill Barr. It'll all be a shit show. Don't ever think it won't be. We just don't quite yet know what kind of poo they're going to be flinging. Another big thing that lots of us are worried about right now is the possibility, a strong one, that Alito and Thomas will resign, so the goon can appoint younger right-wingers to the Supreme Court. But let's go to the giant history tote board. There's also the chance they don't leave. They're the two oldest justices, but Uncle Thomas is 76, and that douche Alito is 74, so they are both notably younger than the Orange Goon. Hell, Chuck Grassley has grandchildren older than Alito, and I can guarantee you that those two have egos the size of Montana, which is where Clarence Thomas parks one of his free motorhomes. Remember, it damn near took a crowbar to get Stephen Breyer out of there so Biden could appoint Ketanji Brown Jackson, so it's no guarantee. There is also the slim, but not impossible hope that whoever replaces Thomas and Alito, if that happens, could be another Souter, or Blackmun, or Warren. Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett have actually shown tiny flashes of humanity on occasion. But here's the thing. Alito and Thomas rarely pay attention to Roberts as a leader like Chief Justices often are. So if they leave, does Roberts, who can be more of a centrist, regain some power? You just don't know what's going to happen. We could actually get someone more reasonable than the black man against the affirmative action programs that got him there, or the Catholic who bases decisions for United States women on 13th century canon law. Some of y'all are thinking about what if? What if Biden had gone after a court-packing thing? Well, just stop it. That's not the way to play the game. Those kinds of moves always come back to bite you in the ass. Just like eliminating the filibuster would be killing us come January if we had done that. Now, wouldn't it? Personally, I think the goal should be term limits on justices. 15 years. That's much better than court packing, and Republicans who know the pendulum is going to swing back again, they might give it a touch of consideration. Now, I say this with a big-ass caveat. Clarence Venmo Me Thomas is moving up the list and needs only 3 years to become the longest-serving justice ever. But out of those top 10 longest-serving, 3 were flamin' liberals, and 2 leaned that way. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, once they got there, those progressive thinkers wanted to have the biggest impact they could. So, term limits, it might fly. Let's put this court in historical perspective, though, this current one. Here's a fact. There have been multiple courts that were way right of this one. The worst decision ever, the Dred Scott decision in 1857, that's the one that declared all blacks, no matter where they lived, were non-citizens, and that free states offered no protection against slave catchers. Yeah, that was a 7-2 decision. So that court, with Roger Taney as Chief Justice, was worse than this one. But I think there was another just as bad. I'm going to do a full Supreme Court history episode someday, but suffice it to say that the 1880s and 1890s decisions that struck down every last drop of the civil rights laws that Lincoln, Grant, and the radical Republicans pushed through after the Civil War, all those decisions were 8-1. That's like the Duke Ellington Band on one side and Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins on the other. That lone dissenter may have had all kinds of shit strapped to his ankles and eyelids, but he was a fucking lone brother. Since the beginning, the Supreme Court were the judicial elites. Alexis de Tocqueville referred to them as such in his famous observational book about the United States. And by elites, I am not talking about Clarence Uncle Thomas's free luxury vacation on Trammell Crow's yacht, or Brett Kavanaugh's privately catered keg stand parties. I mean that they were the final line of defense against unchecked democracy. They sided with slave owners over slaves, and with robber barons over workers every damn time. The Supreme Court didn't do much in the way of liberal shit till some, as in maybe half, of FDR's appointees got there. Those were the true New Dealers. The Earl Warren Court in the 1950s and 60s was the most liberal in history, upholding civil rights laws with a vengeance. But if you look at history as a whole, what we have now is the norm, not the Warren and Burger courts that we were lucky enough to get after World War II. So historically, we probably shouldn't ever count on the Supreme Court to be our saviors. The best bet for saviors are probably the handful of Republican moderates like Lisa Murkowski, and God, I hate to say it, Romney and Collins. Those senators who just got elected They don't have to run again till Cheeto is either dead or gone. And an even more probable savior is the basic dysfunction and turtle speed of Congress. I'll repeat, it's a long damn way from stump rambling into law. And yes, some things he can accomplish by executive order, but not most, not the big ones. Those require Congress. Look, hopefully something in here, something that I've said, offers a flicker of hope and sanity to my fellow libs. Please, enjoy some time on family and nature and dogs. If you don't have a dog, go adopt 2 shelter dogs. Seriously, that's my prescription. Dogs. You can grieve as long as you want, but please know that this was one of those 95-year-old person with a terminal disease kind of things, not the 16-year-old suddenly taken in a drive-by. We should have all seen this shit coming, and by sticking together, keeping our social media accounts working, supporting each other, and concentrating on the things that real Americans of all stripes care about, we can come out better on the other side. We need to find the new voices that can reach the American public. We truly can counteract the slack-jawed radical right commentators. So let's do it, shall we? Here's the most important and positive thing I will say. Everything is reversible. Politics is always a pendulum, so don't back down. We all need to be in this together. Disengaging plays right into their hands. You're either playing the game as part of the solution or you're not. Bernie is a fighter, not a quitter. LBJ and Truman, FDR, the only real liberal presidents we've ever really had, they were fighters. The best of the Democrats in Congress and in state houses, you can bet your ass they'll keep fighting, so let's stay with them, yes? I will repeat what I said at the beginning of this episode. This sucks. And there are horrible people who are going to be in charge, but their dumbassery is exactly why they may not be as efficient as we fear. Democratic lawyers are our hope. There are things we can do in court that will run out the clock on some of this insane bullshit. Activist organizations, social justice groups, get involved. Give them money. Y'all know how much I hate lobbyists and money in politics, but that's the system, and we need to use it and lean on it hard right now. Millions of citizens lobbying and protesting aimed at the handful of moderate Republicans left. It'll take all of us. We need to stick together, maintain our community, and fight for the issues. When 20 million people suddenly find themselves without remotely affordable health insurance that they've enjoyed the last 10 years, when those insane tariffs kick in and you find out what inflation is really about, when the environment goes south in double time, those fools will find out their vote may have won the election, but it lost America the war. For now. We'll need people together fighting for the issues, and it starts in 2026. So pull on your big girl panties, make our community of smart, informed Americans stronger, not weaker. We don't always get our way in life. What we need now is to craft the message that speaks to real concerns, and that is not what some of the liberals have been focused on. As that centrist Bill Clinton's election team said, it's the economy, stupid. It's wages, which have not kept up to income inequality since that piece of shit Reagan took office. It's making unions stronger so workers can have buying power. It's fairness. It's honest concern. It's showing how things like healthcare impacts your pocketbook. It's getting the open bribery out of our elections. It's the everyday Americans over the billionaires who just finished buying a vain and corrupt president. The end. That's message one. I'm here to fight for progressive policies as long as I'm breathing and coherent. Coherent. That's a word we sure as shit can't apply to the incoming president. I mentioned up top, I have not done a new PTB episode in a long while. I've said before that I really like doing these. The history ones, not so much this one, but this is kind of out of necessity, and I really hope it may have helped somebody feel better about our country. The United States is not perfect, as we all know, but I truly do believe it still offers the biggest upside. It's been a giant experiment in democracy for coming up on 250 years, and we just need to keep it moving forward. Anyway, let me start by saying that the kind and supportive comments about Prick the Balloon mean a ton. They really do. But these podcast episodes take up giant amounts of time, and so far I have not made a single dime off Prick the Balloon. No sponsors, No monetization, just expenses. I'm not complaining. It's been my choice. I'm doing them because I love doing them. And I've also got to admit to myself, though, that it takes time away from projects that have more potential to make me money. Like everyone else, I've got to live and pay bills. Look, modern creative folks put things out there like my Patreon account. Others have Substack. And we hope that something comes in from the people who can afford to toss us a bone. We write our books, we paint our wonderful canvases, record great music. It's almost always a labor of love more than a steady income, and most of my creative friends, and that's, Lord knows, half my friends, will tell you we wouldn't have it any other way. But still, we have to use the time wisely. I want to keep doing these. I am passionate about history, and especially passionate about people learning important lessons from history. For now, though, I just can't promise anything like the 2 episodes a month that I originally set out to do. That is me being blunt and honest. So please, make sure you've subscribed to the podcast on the platform of your choice, and that way you'll know when new ones drop. Lastly, in the world of money-making endeavors, I have a new book. It's called The Devil's Lease, and it is probably the book I have been most excited about in a long while. It's my 14th published book, and it starts a brand new historical crime fiction series. This series revolves around a colorful, fiery Texas defense attorney who is really good at stretching the boundaries in representing his clients in murder cases. The books are set in the first decade of the 20th century, as Texas is trying to, let's say, transform from a rough frontier into the modern world. And just like America at the moment, there's still a ways to go. This first book has murder set against a backdrop of convict leasing and sharecropping. I think you'll like it. If you're willing to give it a try, you can buy the book, The Devil's Lease, through Amazon, or you can order it from your favorite independent bookstore, or you can get a signed copy from my website, MikeVanceWriter.com. Until next time, y'all keep your chin up and know that I appreciate you. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out my website at MikeVanceWriter.com. Prick the Balloon is copyrighted by Mike Vance, all rights reserved.